This is the Khmer Times News. My name is Paolo Bonini, and these are your headlines. A cop is arrested for mowing down a moto driver with his car whilst drunk. A horrifying kidnap is ended by quick-thinking police officers, and two men carry tens of millions of dollars worth of drugs into the kingdom. But firstly, it's a headline story, and it is a story that almost beggars belief, as a police officer has been arrested for attempted murder after he deliberately ran over a member of the public multiple times in a fit of a drunken rage. The headline said it all. Drunk police officer who deliberately drove car into man arrested for attempted murder. The incident took place in Kandal province, and what triggered this murderous rage was a traffic incident. It seems a motto had hit the police officer's car, and when it did so, it cracked his windscreen. This sent the policeman into a rage. A rage, it turned out later, was fueled by alcohol. After the accident, the officer chased the motorcyclist. The motorcyclist saw he was being pursued and he sped up. But at an intersection, the moto driver lost control. It was then that the police officer drove his car at the victim and he drove over him. He then reversed and he hit him again. And looking at the photos from the crime scene, we can see the damage caused to the Ford Ranger truck was extensive. But the assault was far from over, as the police officer, after driving at the man, then got out of his car and assaulted the wounded man, hitting him several times. And this physical assault only ended when local residents restrained him. A city police chief has stated the victim was injured in both leg and in the head. And a 38-year-old officer has now been arrested. He has been taken to Tak Mau police station, and a case against him is now being made. On this week's Crime Desk, kidnappers arrested as their plans to get rich quick go awry. A woman is detained for killing a man on the nation's roads, and you will never guess how much in drugs two men carried across the border into the kingdom. Here is a strange thing. Well, to me it is anyway, and it's a case of kidnapping. It is strange, as the more I reflect on this crime, the more I realise it seems to be regional. One so very rarely hears of kidnapping in the West. I, myself, am from England, and in my entire life, I do not recall one single case of kidnapping making the news, whereas here I am often confronted with stories of kidnappings. And sometimes they go terribly wrong, with victims dying at the hands of their aggressors. But this time, thankfully, the police stepped in and brought this most recent case of kidnapping to a very speedy conclusion. The headline read, "Two arrested for $50,000 extortion, kidnapping of a foreigner in Phnom Penh." Two suspects have been arrested for their part in an extortion of a foreign national in Phnom Penh. The two suspects themselves were a man and a woman, and they were arrested this week and sent to court. But unfortunately, another two members of the exact same gang have managed to escape. The two criminals are suspected of kidnapping and torturing a Chinese man. And using torture and physical abuse, they demanded a cool $50,000 from the victim's family. But the family did the right thing, and they contacted the police. The intelligence department launched an investigation, and soon they had tracked down the man. A police raid was launched at a property, and the beaten man was released safely. Severely injured, but alive. The two suspects arrested are Cambodian nationals. Two others are still being sought. Another big drug bust, but this time, for a change, it's not meth, but opium. And it was a huge haul. As the headline testified, it read, 2 men charged with trafficking 470 kilos of opium. 2 suspects have been arrested in Stung Treng province for the largest opium haul of the year. The Stung Treng Provincial Court yesterday charged and jailed 2 Cambodian men for allegedly transporting 470 kilos of opium across the Cambodia-Laos border in Stung Treng province. According to a warrant issued by the investigating judge, the suspects were identified as Tuk Vanak, aged 55, and Yu Kre, aged 55. Both men were charged with possession, trafficking, and transportation of illegal drugs. If convicted, they could face 20 to 30 years in prison. The deputy chief of the anti-drug trafficking unit in Stung Treng province said the arrests occurred at around 1 a.m. early Sunday morning as the suspects were smuggling drugs on foot across the border. He said, when they saw our police forces, they attempted to flee into the forest, but our officers gave chase and swiftly apprehended them. He also confirmed that authorities confiscated 50 packages of opium, weighing a total of 470 kilos. Now, that is an awful lot of weight for 2 men to carry. And it turns out that this opium, more than likely, was to be processed and turned into meth. The deputy chief stated that just 1 kilo of opium can be processed into 4 to 5 kilos of meth. Now, that means that 470 kilos captured would easily have become a staggering 2,350 kilos of meth. And that haul of opium that those 2 guys were carrying on their backs in the dead of night could have been converted into over $35 million of drugs. And that is simply incredible. The 2 men have now been detained and they await their day in court. To close our crime desk for this week, a shorter story, but it's one that's worthy of some airtime, as it's nice to see a result in the never-ending stream of hit-and-run cases that we so often feature on this show. The headline read, "Woman sent to court after man's death." A woman has been sent to court by Phnom Penh authorities this week after a traffic accident that caused the death of a man earlier this week. Authorities say that Tao Makara, who is just 27 years old, was driving her black Lexus in Phnom Penh late one afternoon. It seems she was doing 2 things wrong that day. Firstly, she was driving at speed. A speed fast enough to kill the man she hit. And the other thing she did was obviously not paying attention to the road. Now, I can only surmise here, but potentially she was texting with her mobile phone at the time of the accident. And the very reason that I say that is I am forever seeing vehicles, cars, as well as bikes, swaying across the road. And when I pull up alongside them, I so often see the driver is texting whilst driving. So please allow me to give you a safety tip. If a car is swaying, that means the driver is looking down, then looking up, and then they keep correcting themselves. This is as lethal as it is lunatic. But don't believe me. According to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration of America, research suggests that texting whilst driving is far more dangerous than drunk driving. The main reason is because reaction time is so late. They simply hit their victims at full speed, whereas a drunk driver so often slams on their brakes. So how bad is it? Well, the US Traffic Safety Administration report states that those that use their phones when driving are 23 times more likely to get into an accident than a drunk driver. And that leads to untold deaths on the roads. So maybe, just maybe, as well as a breath test, a check of the driver's phone logs to see what it is they were doing with their phones at the moment of impact could help bring deaths down. Now, to close, we have a story that shocked me and it scared me. Reason being, I spend an awful lot of time wandering around the countryside, hunting ancient temples. And my journeys take me into areas that are known to have landmines. The big giveaway to me is it's not unusual for myself to encounter farmers that have a leg or a limb missing from a landmine incident. So this next headline really did catch my attention. It said, nearly half of mine accidents occur outside identified mine fields. Now, just think about that. Half of the tens of thousands of landmines out there are not where we think they are, and that should give many pause for thought. The number itself is based on the fact that half of all mine accidents in Cambodia over the past decade have occurred outside of officially identified minefields. And that is an alarming indicator that vast areas remain unsurveyed. The government has tasked the Cambodian Mine Action Centre to conduct a comprehensive survey to identify the contaminated areas. This task focuses particularly on the areas along the shared borders, which are heavily affected by anti-personnel mines as well as other devices. Of the most recent 600 cases, almost all are in the provinces bordering Thailand. And it is this that indicates many minefields remain unidentified. So how dangerous is it? Well, a popo, you know those guys with the landmine sniffing rats, they say there is an estimated 4 to 6 million unexploded landmines as well as unexploded ordnance. And as this report clearly shows us, we don't know where half of them are. And that means the funeral bell will toll again and again for innocent men and women as well as children whose only misfortune was to take one single step in a place that has been marked for death. It's time to have a look ahead and see what the weather has in store for us next week.
Okay, so here we are at the end of the show, and it's time for the jolly old weather. But before we go there, we like to show you a photo of the week. And what I've selected this week is I was watching a documentary on North Korea, my latest fancy, and there was this thing about this guy who's got, to me, the worst job in the world. You know, they've got these very deep subway systems in North Korea and these stairs, escalators that go on forever. Well, he sits at the bottom of them in this tiny little yellow plastic box, and he has to watch everyone come down and go up. And that's all he does all day, probably for 10 hours a day. And all he sees is a river of misery, if you think about it. So that's the photo. I saw this and I thought, whoa, I'm glad I'm not him. But there you go. That's the photo of the week. And it's time now to go to the weather. Now, hang on. I just need to give it a gentle tickle and a bit of a stroke. And oh, there it goes. It's up in front of me. And what do I see? Oh, my goodness. Good Lord, look at that. If you look at Saturday, we've got 100 degrees, 100-degree topper there. But across the board, the average is 96. The humidity this week is still high. It's at the 60% mark.
This has been the Khmer Times News. Please do subscribe and comment and stay up to date with all the breaking news by following us on both Facebook and Telegram. This has been Paolo Bonini, and that was the week that was. I'll see you next weekend for your weekly Roundup.